George, let's start with a worst-case scenario, if we could, and that is a no-deal outcome. If that did transpire, what would that imply for British growth prospects?
I think it'd be very damaging indeed. This is not to say anything about the long-run growth prospects from a Brexit deal, but certainly in the short term, there's a very sizable risk that things will seize up, whether it be from aircraft to medicines at the border, whatever it might be. And of course, that would be very damaging indeed for economic growth. But one thing which is really interesting, there was a survey which was done of Economist, and it asked them, what do you think is the most likely outcome of Brexit? They used to answer first, free trade agreement, second, the possibility of staying in something like the European Economic Area or something similar. Now, the second option, or the second most likely thing, is no deal at all. So it's getting much more likely that some of these tail risks are actually going to happen.
So wouldn't a second referendum act as a much-needed circuit breaker, and would it serve to alleviate all this uncertainty, or do you think it would make it worse?
I think in the near term it probably would make it worse. I think the European Union will be very favourable in terms of wanting a second referendum. I think if a country like the United Kingdom, which is probably the one of, or if not the most Eurosceptic of all of the European Union countries, can't leave the EU, then nobody can. It's a great advert for the stability of the European Union. So I suspect that the EU would provide more time. The Article 50 timing would probably be extended by another 6 to 12 months to allow that referendum to get through Parliament, to be held. But I also suspect it would actually inject a significant amount more extra uncertainty, because it means that the Remain option, which economists currently put very last in the list of possible outcomes, would obviously be another new outcome which could happen.
When you talk to corporate Britain, George, as I'm sure you must be doing when you talk to business leaders and companies, what's the mood there in terms of confidence? Because I can't imagine that it can be particularly ebullient right now, given the uncertainty.
Well, I think it's weakening, and it's difficult to know exactly why that's the case. It could be because of Brexit uncertainty, which I think is very likely. If you think about investment, the biggest enemy to investment is uncertainty. But it also could be because the global economy is slowing. The interesting thing, of course, if you look at economic growth over the course of the last few years, up until 2016, the UK was at the very top of the G7 pack. Right now, it's pretty close to the very bottom of the G7 pack. Now, the UK is one of those countries which does very well when the global economy does well. It's a highly open economy, and it tends to respond quite well to stronger world. So the fact that it hasn't this time suggests to me that it probably is a Brexit story, which is generating weaker business investment, lower sterling, which is also putting downward pressure on consumer spending to the extent that inflation's gone up. So it's being hit from all sides.
Hey everybody, it's Hadley Gamble from our new CNBC Middle East Bureau in Abu Dhabi. Thanks for stopping by. Now, to watch more, you can try one of the videos that just popped up on your screen. And don't forget to subscribe.